Alright, I think we're up. Still on the laptop setup. I do apologize. I hope it's not too terrible. I have my mic, but I won't be using it right now, but I will for the future. The next two we have. Yeah, I'm just, I guess, here to answer any questions. I did kind of the high-level overview on Wednesday's video of where I usually try to break it down, like, from my thinking standpoint, kind of, like, logically. Also, which is kind of what these comments and the instructions I feel like do already, and kind of by nature of having these functions for like homework 5 already kind of broken up, it kind of gets to that thinking, right? Which is something I want everyone to kind of strive toward. Like when you get a problem statement, try to go line by line and think how that translates to code, if it should be its own function, if you should, wrap two things in the same function. That kind of thing, getting the logic into code is a big thing I try to walk through with all the homeworks kind of before they're actually due. I do think that's helpful, and I feel like this homework kind of already did it for you by nature of the segmentation of all these functions and just by the comments and kind of instructions. Plus, if you kind of know already the game of tic-tac-toe, you can kind of say, okay, well, step 1, I need to check for a win. Step 2, I need to kind of solicit the move from the player. And then you can break those down further, right? So it's like when I want to check for a win, I want to check for a diagonal win. I want to check for a horizontal win. I want to check for a vertical win. And then continually prompt it. And then, if I just made the move of an X, I know the next move is going to be an O, so I'll need to swap the piece. So that's kind of already there by nature. Let me make sure real quick that my mic is going good. Okay. So I won't be doing that again because I feel like I've already done that. I don't want to beat a dead horse. But yeah, so definitely looking for questions. If there are no questions, I will probably sign off early. But I do have stuff I guess I can talk about in the meantime. The lab will definitely go up tonight. Definitely. And I'm going to make the lab be due Friday instead of the usual Thursday. And I think it's because I'm almost certainly going to have to push the lab office hours back to Friday instead of Thursday. So I thought if I'm not going to go over it till Friday, everyone might as well just get the extra day to do it. No sense in imposing deadlines for no reason. So I'll be pushing that back. I don't know what that noise was. And then the homework is in the works. I think I have it. There's a slight chance it'll come out tonight, but probably tomorrow morning. Probably right when the previous homework is due. So you should still get the full week. But it's in the very similar vein as this homework. I don't think I'll scaffold it as much, which means to say, like if I was going to give this homework again, but for this week, I'd say instead of really giving you all these comments and breaking it into all these functions, I would, maybe take away some of them and just say, hey, like, solve or program connect 4, for instance. But there's kind of this one concept I want to show everyone in the homework, but not really get you to do, just show you an example of it, so when it comes up again, it won't be a shocker. And I think I found a good way to do that. I just need to test it some more. So that might go out late tonight, but I feel like also if I did release it at like 11 p.m. EST, no one would really work on it. So it might just go out tomorrow morning, so we can all get some sleep tonight. But I think it'll be fun. I think if you enjoyed this homework or didn't mind it as much as the other ones, you'll probably like it. And I think it's at a good scope. Which relatedly, the lab. So actually, we got some questions. I'll dive into the questions before going down my little tangent. Having trouble correctly altering the X and O when calling the start function. When the move is not valid and it prompts the user to choose another move, the piece will change. I'm assuming that if the move is not valid, then the piece should remain the same. Yeah, so that's correct. So in start, for instance, or here, right? So then we want to get the player's move. So then we would call, what's it called? Like get moved, right? So, what are the parameters again? Yeah, get move, or input the board and the piece. And so then in get move, it should like run this while loop. And in this while loop, it should have like a check, like, an if and else or something, that should check if the move is valid. And only once we like hit that the if is a valid move, then should we change the piece? So I mean, there's ways you can do it. You can change the piece in get move. You could change the piece out of get move. But I think one way, especially kind of as I'm thinking of it now, is maybe in here where I'm kind of highlighting. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about that too. It's a terrible display. Right, so I was talking about like in here. Actually, let me make sure it updates and see if we can both see it. Oh geez. I'm just waiting to see if this is high enough. Okay, yeah, it's barely high enough. So the code right here, actually I'll just make this window smaller just in case. Struggling with this laptop, y'all. Right here, right, so we want to get the player's move. So maybe we'll call get move first in this while. And then we go back up to get move here as I try to scroll. Right, and then we're in this while loop. And so maybe in the while, we would do like an if and an else. Or some way, I mean, there's actually a lot of ways you could do it to check if the move is valid. So we're assuming that 1 through 9 are the only inputs. You know, I'm not going to, with the test functions and all, and as me playing it, I'm not going to input like 20 or whatever. So you can, you know, you don't have to do any checks like that. It's 1 or 9. But you need to see that space is occupied. So maybe you should keep like a running tab of spaces that have already been filled. Or maybe you should query the move I input with the spaces that are already taken in the board, which is also an input piece, or an input parameter, rather. And then only if it's valid, then should you make the move and change the piece. Otherwise, you know, maybe you'll want to set move back to just be, you know, blank, so the while loop gets hit again, something like that. So basically, never would you want to call change active piece until you actually make that move on the game board. So if your game piece is changing, even though the move might not be valid, then you might be calling it at the wrong point. When I say it, I mean you may be calling change active piece at a non-opportune spot. So I would only want to call that function when the move has been successfully made on the board. And to know if it's successfully made on the board or not, you would want to do some kind of check, like maybe an if, to see if the actual board or list is occupied at that point, or you could keep like kind of another running tab of moves that have been taken already. So there's kind of some different ways you could do it. Oh, so let me make this bigger. I hate like the kind of infinite mirror view. If that helps. I can also, I guess, kind of elaborate on that more. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to include it there, because you technically could have like a get move here, and then you could do change of a type active piece, whatever that takes in, piece. So then you could do something like this, because I mean technically with get move, right, it's a while. So if you do your checking of like the valid moves in this while loop, then you won't exit the while loop until you have a valid move. Then you'll make the move if it's valid, and then you'll kind of leave the while loop, right, and do draw board. So then you could change your active piece like after the fact. But it's kind of preference, honestly. Like I don't even remember which one I technically did when I was first doing this. I guess it just kind of depends on the setup. And neither, get move or start isn't like too lengthy where it kind of would be encouraged to do it one way or the other. So I think this case, it really does kind of come down to preference. And yeah, I'm gonna probably go on my little lab tangent for this week, but feel free to keep asking questions or anything. So this week's OLI module is similar in kind of to the recursion one that we did this previous week, right? Where it's kind of like language agnostic, but the big idea is there, right? So like the idea of recursion is kind of key to it, hence the name, right? But there's no like explicit Python code teaching the idea. And that's what this is like too, this our final module, the data structures one. And so it talks about arrays, which honestly are like just like Python lists. But in most every other language, there's not really a list per se. Lists kind of function more as arrays. So I just, this is included because if you are using another language or you're, talking to someone that I guess is more fluent in non-Python languages, then they might just use the word array. Like I personally always say arrays, but really that's just like a Python list basically. But the kind of key concept, I would say, key concept number one from this, in addition to these learning objectives, is this notion of like a 2D array right here where you can see like the two elements. So we've been working with one-dimensional arrays or like lists in Python, but then you can do like a two-dimensional one, which is like a list of lists. And so that's kind of what these pictures are getting at. And if you feel totally lost right now, don't worry. I mean, there's a lot of activities, and right, the tech should clear it up. Then you can even try some sample code on your own. But that's like the first kind of big idea. And the second one is our linked lists, which is kind of a data structure. Usually one of the first kind of data structures you learn after arrays and lists. In most intro languages, I think they're super useful in terms of, I think they actually do get used, like in the wild, like when you're actually making programs and writing little software and prototypes. So that's nice, but I also think they do lend themselves nicely to a lot of computational thinking elements, which is kind of like recursion, right? As like really talking up how it's good for your thinking, but maybe not used as much in the wild. While I would say linked lists are pretty common in the wild compared to some of the other kind of obscure data structures that are taught. And also they're really nice for your like kind of your thinking and getting you to implement and think kind of like algorithmically. So it's cool. And so that's like the second main topic, and this is what the lab will actually cover. In particular, page 52 of linked lists, which I do drop I think twice or three times in the lab to really emphasize it. But you'll be working with linked lists, and it's I gave you a lot of skeleton code with a lot of scaffolding, and you just really need to complete these two functions that are kind of talked about here. But again, it's taking the logic that's explained here and in these small videos and translating it to Python code. I think normally that wouldn't be too hard, but then I'm also kind of introducing this other concept that we haven't covered in OLI. But it's kind of needed, and it's this notion of like classes and objects. And so I'm gonna post a page too that has useful resources for it. And I think if you just take 10 minutes and go over them, it'll be clear enough. And I gave some decent sample code, I think, to kind of clarify things. But I don't want everyone to dive into the lab and be like, this isn't an OLI. So I also have like a big paragraph in the lab instructions about that. And it's not like crucial per se to the lab. Like you won't be coding really an object or like really a class yourself in a way. You'll just be kind of using them, and the lab should hopefully clarify it. But also if you spend maybe 10 minutes on this other resource I'll include, it'll help. But I think that'll really help along the way. And again, I'm making that a lab too, because we'll be going over it Friday. Again, I'm going to post this as well, but the usual Thursday lab will be Friday. But it's intentionally made a lab because even though it's a short amount of code, I think conceptually it's kind of a decent amount to throw at you. But I want to be able to walk through it with everyone and then have that lab office hour session as well as the follow-up Sunday office session to kind of clarify on it. And I think it'll be helpful for PUI and any other kind of programming stuff you take. So I thought it's a nice way to throw that in. But yeah, again, like lab-wise, lines of code, which is a terrible metric, as I always say. I don't know, it's like maybe 15 lines of code for the lab. But there is code in there that I provide that's on this like new kind of topic that can be confusing for sure. So that's I probably should have actually just released it before this session, but I can just do that after. I'm in student view now, so I can't. But it's a good one, I think. And you'll have the extra day. I'll push this day back because, again, I'm going to have to make an announcement, push the office hours back due to more travel, unfortunately. But I think the Friday and Sunday office hours, so Sunday will stay the same as it always is, but they'll both be on my regular kind of machine setup. So I'll have a better screen, no code cut off, probably a better mic. So it'll be nicer. But yes, that's kind of a preview for the lab that's upcoming. No quiz. And again, since in lieu of a quiz, if you want to take the extra 10, maybe even 20 minutes to go over some of the resources I'll link, I think it'll give you a nice understanding of this concept that, again, we're not using so much, but I think will be definitely useful to have some knowledge of it for PUI and any kind of future programming stuff. And then the homework will be a little less hands-off than the tic-tac-toe one for this week, but kind of in a similar vein, where it's just, using some helper functions to kind of combine them to make this one program that's maybe reminiscent of a game, and using this other topic that is going to be helpful. So that's probably going to drop tomorrow morning, but slight chance tonight, but I doubt it. And then should be due the same time Monday, and then gonna hope to get some more grading done. I should actually have probably put those in. Both quizzes that I'm behind on are good, so I need to release those, and I'm working through the homeworks now. But again, if you go under grades and see if you have comments, even though the grades aren't released, if there was something that came up, I would have left you a comment now, even though your grade doesn't show, so that would show up, so don't fret. But everything's been good. What else? Oh, so there's that Piazza post, if some of y'all saw it. That was on one of the Did I Get This is in the OLI, and it's a text matching one. And I just kind of posted the answer there. And I think the answer actually that the question was about was correct. It's just because it uses the kind of language agnostic stuff that it's a little confusing. And text match questions are honestly kind of bad. So the ideas that they get at are good, but looking for a particular string to match an answer on is kind of bad. And I think there's another instance of that in this module. So, if you're doing a text match question and it's not showing up as right in the system, it may be right, it just maybe, have an extra space or something. But if you are concerned about that, definitely post on Piazza and I can make sure. But again, don't fret too much, because the kind of two big ideas are the 2D arrays and linked lists. And we'll definitely get practice with linked lists on the lab. And we'll be going over it. And I even say in the lab, it's one of those cases where I think when you just break it down to what it is, it's not too bad. Again, it's kind of translating what the OLI logic says into Python code. But since I'm also including this notion of classes and objects in it, that it may seem overwhelming, but if you just kind of focus in on the two functions you need to complete, it shouldn't be that bad. I just want everyone to try, and I say that too, just if you don't even know where to start or you do have questions, definitely post on Piazza. And again, we will be going over it. And so if you don't get it like 100% correct, I wouldn't fret, because that's part of what labs are, right? It's kind of low stakes. We go over it. I just don't want submissions that just have like a comment that says like I couldn't figure it out, right? And then it's like, if you couldn't figure it out, you should have probably posted on Piazza or something to let me know so we could work through it. So at least give it a shot. But I believe in everyone. All the homeworks and labs and quizzes, in particular the homeworks, have been like super good for the past 2 weeks. So eager for tic-tac-toe for looking at these. There's already been like a decent amount of submissions for it too, so that's good. Hopefully I didn't over scaffold it. I wanted a little bit of challenge in there. But again, hopefully it's kind of like rewarding and cool to see you can make these kind of like 5 different functions and run them all together in this kind of like looping thing and actually play this game from these different pieces you wrote. And it had kind of a graphical element, right, with printing out the game board and taking player input. So you kind of had like all these elements of like a real program or like prototype thing that you actually will be doing. So hopefully that was enjoyable. I think that kind of stuff too gets even better when you're actually tying it to like a real kind of interface, like a web interface, with more kind of like JavaScript and HTML stuff, which is like, kind of more pooey. But the logic and the like kind of underlying code, right, is super similar. So. But so I'll type this as well, but if there's like no more questions, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and sign off, so I can get a little more time to kind of finalize that quiz before I upload it, or lab. No quiz. There's no quiz this week, which is fine. But before the kind of class is over, I'm gonna provide another kind of like document that has a lot of resources that hopefully will be useful for like when you're in PUI. I'm sure Jason has a bunch of these already, but some of my favorite ones. And there's also there's at least 3 TAs, if not more, for that. So they'll all have some nice resources too, I'm sure. We'll probably stick around for like 2 more minutes, unless there's a question or something you want me to dive into. But I just feel like this time could be spent, if there's no questions, on getting that lab out for everyone. And I think I have my schedule for this week, so I will post an announcement as well, with the office hours slightly shifted, letting people know the lab is out and the homework's coming very soon, and providing a link. I think there's 3 resources that I kind of want to share. They're all pretty brief, but I think they'll be helpful. And then, yeah, I think I'll post that announcement will come tonight or tomorrow. I think maybe actually tomorrow. Maybe I should wait on the homework. Just checking the ambient noise. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and finish up the lab and post it. Yeah, and an announcement will, actually, now the more I think about it, probably just come tomorrow morning, once I have that homework, so I can just go ahead and say the homework's out too. But Thursday's office hours will be moved to Friday, The Sunday one will stay the same, and then Tuesdays might shift, but I'll definitely post as soon as I find out. I need to check some emails. All right, hope everyone had a good weekend, had a nice 4th if you're into that, and if there's anything with the homework that comes up, which is due tomorrow, post on Piazza. I will be fairly active tomorrow morning, so even if it's a last minute question, totally fine. Just post it. But yeah, looking forward to it, and look out for an announcement tomorrow, and if you want to get started early, the lab's def coming out tonight, so see ya.